So guys, I'm doing a video series about AJ Styles, and I want to talk about, 10 reasons why he should wrestle for TNA Wrestling, why he should do his retirement there. And I think the big thing is that he started out in TNA Wrestling. So obviously there is like a sense of a full circle coming along. The next thing is that he'll build new stars, such as like AJ Francis and Leon Slater. He can also work with Troy Miguel, if I'm saying his name right, or Trey Miguel, and then he could also work with Mike Santana. So there are some matches that he can do there. I think another big benefit of TNA Wrestling is that they have really great ticket prices. So obviously, it wouldn't be like WWE where with John Cena, people are talking about like how some really cheap seats were like $800 really, and then you had to pay more really. So definitely he can probably reach a lot more people by not being but it could be good for like a lot of fans who want to see him instead of just being like, okay, well, only certain fans could see him because it's so overpriced and everything like that. I think like a fourth reason is that ultimately it doesn't make him look like a sellout because obviously AEW is going to pay him a lot of money, so he doesn't look like a sellout for doing that. My fifth reason is that he'll avoid AEW and their injuries because, a lot of times what happens with AEW is that they wrestle very intense styles. So, does he want to retire with a serious injury or paralysis or death? Or does he want to, wrestle maybe in TNA Wrestling where, the style is a lot more safer and everything like that? I would think that sixth reason is that when you look at TNA Wrestling, they do really good jobs with stories. That I've kind of mentioned that they do things when you watch the Revolution. When I was watching their pay-per-view that they had a few weeks ago, Genesis, that they were doing recaps. They were doing things like they made you emotionally invested. They were doing backstage segments. When you look at AEW, it's usually match after match after match. Sometimes there's no build to a pay-per-view. Like, you may have 10 matches or 13 matches, but maybe 2 of the matches have like a build or an emotional investment really. So when you have like AJ Styles like retire, it would make sense for it to be like, hey, what if the storylines like Leon Slater wanting to actually face AJ Styles at the end of the year as Leon Slater is holding the TNA championship? Or what would happen if you want Mike Santana like saying something like, I want to be the TNA champion, I'll go through all these obstacles and I'm going to face AJ Styles as the TNA champion really. Like honestly, like those types of storylines where it's like interwoven and other things like that. Like just like when Shawn Michaels faced The Undertaker, like how he was going through a lot of people, he was doubting himself. He screwed The Undertaker at the Elimination Chamber, and then they had their match. So like I think with TNA Wrestling, I kind of trust them a lot more to do an interwoven storyline. I know I said this before, but another big issue is that we're avoiding a Jon Moxley death match or a Darby Allin death match or Anarchy in the Arena. Because again, what would happen if he went to AEW and they said something like, okay, we want you to wrestle in Blood and Guts, or we want to do something where it's the EVPs, where it's the Elite with AJ Styles versus the Death Riders in and Blood and Guts, or it's the Don Callis family versus the Young Bucks and Elite and Anarchy in the Arena, or in Blood and Guts, or whatever really. You can see AJ Styles being stabbed with a fork a bunch of times, or all bloodied and other shit like that. So, it could kind of hurt his reputation really, because I remember he wrestled for the Combat Zone Wrestling Heavyweight Championship, and I believe when he had the match, whoever he faced really, I don't believe that he agreed to a hardcore match really. Like he wouldn't do a tournament of death or anything like that really. But that's kind of the other issue too in TNA Wrestling. I think he's wrestling Monsters Ball and other things like that, but I don't think that they would do something like put him into that match, or like, they're not going to make him a hardcore covered in blood type of wrestler. But there's a chance in AEW they'll be like, okay, well, you know what, we want to put you in a hardcore match with Jon Moxley before you retire, or we want you to face Josh Alexander in a in a Texas death match or in a lights out match type of thing. I think, yeah, and then like for three other reasons, I would say like the other thing too is that they can actually, and I think they should do this. They should name the TNA Hall of Fame the Phenomenal One Hall of Fame, really, because with AJ Styles, he should be named after the Hall of Fame. So there's a chance of that happening. And then the next thing I would say is that he deserves to be in the TNA Hall of Fame. You can't really put somebody in the TNA Hall of Fame unless they're actually part of that company or they're working for WWE. And I think like the last thing that I would say is that he would get a WWE Legends contract. More than likely, if he joins TNA Wrestling, more than likely if he joins AEW Wrestling, they will not allow him to have a Legends contract. So, or they may be like, okay, once you're gone, really, since you're wrestling for AEW, we're not going to have you come back with a Legends contract. We're not going to have you be a coach or whoever when you retire, really, to earn extra money. We're just going to like have you be like, okay, you join our competitor, fuck you, really. So with staying in TNA Wrestling, he'll be in people's good graces. And I think maybe the last thing is that there could be people who want to learn, because there's footage of Leon Slater and AJ Styles talking. That says something versus Jack Perry, Real Glass, Cry Me a River with CM Punk, really. So definitely that could be another motivation, is that he can probably run into people that will respect what he has to say a lot more, where in AEW, it's really just like a free-for-all. You just do whatever you want to do, really.